Ali, מה נשמע? בסדר, שלומך.
Okay, chapter 14.
No, la cosa è
With the information that we have learned in the past months, weeks,
Good morning.
we can understand Hinimidus Abeinani, Himidus Kol Adam. On the one hand, the Beinani seems to be such a great person, tremendously fulfilled person. The only problem is he still has a Yetzirah, but he's in control. That seems enormous. In fact, for the Rebbe to say about somebody, this is a Beinani, like the Alter Rebbe described in the Tanya, only a few individuals in a whole generation get such a comment about them. However, since they do, the Alter Rebbe says this is something everybody could do it. As the Alter Rebbe writes it, he didn't write the book of Tzaddikim, which is only for Tzaddikim. He wrote a book that everybody can relate to. So this is what everybody aspires to. This is what we all would like to be. Midas Kol Adam. This is the character that every person can achieve. V'acharei Kol Adam Yamshuch, and everybody is drawn to try and reach it. Shekol Adam Yachol Liyes Beinani, because every person can be a Beinani, b'chol eis or b'chol shah, at any given time or moment. Now here's the key phrase. So it says, on the one hand, it says a Beinani never did a sin his whole life long, and he never will. He never did. But he has the Yetzirah, but he's struggling. Whereas here, the Alter Rebbe says much more than that. It says, to achieve the rank of a Beinani is something that you can achieve, and it's real while you're there, and then maybe you lose it. But you can get it back. You can come back to this level, and that's what he says. And another way of looking at it is this, that a person should never think, well, I mean, I've heard this many times, you've gone to Mitzrayim, you speak to people, I can't put on tefillin today. I've done too many bad things in my life. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I did this morning. I can't do these holy things are not, I'm not worthy of them. Says the Alter Rebbe, no, that's not true. This is a level that every person can achieve, b'chol eisa, b'chol shah, which means any time, and every time, and all the time. So there you are. There's the challenge to every one of us. We could all do it. Just have to brace ourselves for the effort. Shazeh davar hamazur le'o. Ki abeinani eina moi as bara. The tzaddik despises anything that's not God, not holy. It says, King David writes, I hated my enemies with a total hatred. Well, he means the enemies of the Jewish people, the real enemies who go to war. But he also means the enemy in the left side of my heart. The desires for things that are not connected to Hashem, things that will hide Hashem from my consciousness, from my actions, my words, my thoughts. I hate it. I hate the force that incites these challenges and problems. Says King David, I hate them with a total hatred. That's because he's a tzaddik. What about the regular person? Not for me to say that. And not only I don't hate it, I like it. I had a nephew staying with us several years ago. He was learning in Brunois. The head of the yeshiva in Brunois hammered it into the heads and hearts of the boys there that they should not enjoy physical pleasures from this world, should not indulge themselves, and especially ice cream. This was tops on the list of things that had to be avoided in order to conquer your Yetzer Hara. And somebody came to a wedding and you saw there was the Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Nemenov, having a bowl of ice cream. He said, Rebbe, you told us always we should never have ice cream. He says, oh, this is ice cream? I thought it was cold soup. A tzaddik hates anything that isn't part of his avodas Hashem. The Chayzer of the Rebbe, Rabbi Yoel Khan, said you have to get up in the morning and think to yourself, first thing, either before you say Moda Ani, either after you say Moda Ani, or even before you say Moda Ani, what can I do today that Moshiach should come now? What can I do? So he's directing himself on this path. If I'm going to brush my teeth, if I have to brush my teeth this morning, it's so I can say brachas in a nice voice, in a pleasant way, so Mashiach will come. Everything is so Mashiach will come. The Beinoni, he's not exactly there. He does not, he is not disgusted. He does not find evil things loathsome. What the girls in Beis Rivka call nauseous, misuse of the word. The word in English, nauseous, means it makes me feel sick. A thing itself cannot be nauseous. It can make you feel nauseous. But in Beis Rivka, they use it to mean anything that anything that seems disgusting, they just say it is nauseous. Okay. So therefore, the Beinoni, the tzaddik, finds things that are not connected with Hashem nauseous. He doesn't want to have anything to do with them. He hates them. But this is something that's in your heart. We don't all have control of our heart. In our heart, we have two sides. We have the side that wants to do godly things, and we have the side that wants to do selfish things. And now comes another factor in the equation. As you go through the day, you're subjected to many different influences, and not every moment is like the next. So one moment you may feel very inspired, and the next moment you may be very tempted to do something that you know you don't really approve of it, but you couldn't help yourself. They put out in the yeshiva every morning a box of chocolate chip cookies. You see some bochrim come and take 1 or 2 cookies. Some bochrim walk away with 5 or 6, or even a whole cup full or 2 cups full to get through the morning. The Beinoni is going to try and control his impulses. He's going to work at it. And to work at it, girls, this is something I heard from Rabbi Groner maybe 50 years ago. To work at it, this is war. And we have a lot of examples of how to fight a war. It's on the internet every single day because there's a war going on now. And each side has to plan and ahead. What am I going to do if, as and when? When the temptation comes, how am I going to respond? If you don't plan it out in advance, you're going to lose. I told you once, this is the one time I told you. I tend to repeat and say the same stories over and over again because they're meaningful to me. Not all the girls like to hear the same story so many times, but this one I only told you once. There was a fellow here, he went through Morristown. He was a Baal Tshuva. He was from a Russian background. When he was a little boy, he was so wild, his father didn't know what to do with him, so he sent him to a professional wrestler to train him. He's a little kid. And he trained and he became an Olympic champion. And then he found out his family moved to Australia. And he found out that he was Jewish. He found out about keeping Shabbos. And came the challenge of his life, the championship contest for the world championship in his class of wrestling was on Shabbos. And he said, "Coach, I'm sorry, I cannot fight this fight. I cannot participate." And he resigned from the Olympic team. And we met him. He was here, he was in yeshiva, he was tremendously strong and agile and capable, and he was a very nice guy. And I used to speak to him. I said, how did you ever get to be such a talented wrestler? He says, because through practice, we would do a thing hundreds and hundreds of times. What do you mean do a thing? That a person would put you in a certain hold, a painful hold, and you have to break the hold. And you do it over and over and over and over and over again, hundreds of times, till it becomes automatic, like riding a bicycle. Nobody has to think about riding a bicycle. You know how to ride a bicycle. Did you learn how to ride a bicycle? How do you? Your father held until you got it. I was 7 years old. My father ran after me, holding onto the seat of the bicycle, and then all of a sudden he wasn't holding on. So that's how he did it. So the same thing with the Yetzer Hara. You have to think, when the Yetzer Hara gets the better of you, you have to recognize it. Think, this is not what I've been learning in Machon Liadus for, just to indulge myself in my pleasures. You have to think, what am I going to do next time? How am I going to deal with this situation? When I'm really hungry, I could really use a Danish, and there are Danishes set out on the table and everybody can go and take. Am I going to go and take? There's another story I told you. On the 5th day of Av, which is coming up in a couple of months, the yard site of the Arizal, was the inspiration for a lot of the things that are written in the Tanya. All the Hasidus and Kabbalah we have comes through the Arizal. Yitzchak Luria lived in Sfas. So where he is now, he's in the Beis HaChaim, the cemetery in Sfas. And the Rebbe said on this day, all of a sudden the Rebbe said, everybody should go and pay their respects, say some Tehillim by the cave of the Arizal. There's also a cave there with water running out of the rocks, and it's gathered in a pool, which is a mikveh, kosher mikveh. And since anybody goes to this mikveh will not leave the world without doing tshuva. The water is very cold, very, very cold. Anyway, so on that day we went there. They put up, the tzach put up buses, and we went. And yeah, I went to the mikveh, so there's still hope. And I sat beside a boy who was from America. He had just moved to Eretz Yisrael. He was a dental assistant. He was setting up a practice. You know, he's the guy that does the stuff in the back when you go to the dentist, and he makes the things that the dentist wants to put on your teeth. And he told me that he had yechidus with the Rebbe, and he told the Rebbe that he was fasting. Every Monday and Thursday, he would fast. Why would he do that? Because he wanted to control the way he eats. He didn't want to just eat because he was hungry like an animal. A dog, you put the food on in the bowl on the floor, the dog eats it. They make advertisements of it on television. This is the food you should get for your dog. He didn't want to be that dog. He was fasting to show that he could control himself. And he mentioned this to the Rebbe in Yechidus. Those were the days when you could talk to the Rebbe in Yechidus. And the Rebbe got very upset with him. He said, don't you know that it says in the Tanya, in the book about Teshuvah, that the sages don't allow a person to fast except when there's a communal fast, like on Yom Kippur, or on the 9th of Tisha B'Av, or the 17th of Tammuz, when the whole Jewish people have to fast. Then you fast along with them. But to fast because you want to be a special Jew, that's just ego. That's evil. Not only is it the sin of pride and arrogance, but it's going to weaken you. So you won't learn Torah properly. So that means that you're like a Yetzer Hara. You're preventing the Torah from being learned. Oh, he was very upset. The Rebbe was really scolding him. And he felt terrible. So then the Rebbe had mercy on him and he said, however, if you want to continue in this path and trying to serve Hashem, I have a piece of advice. When you eat your next meal, or any meal, choose one of the things on the plate that you really like and leave over one spoonful. Just leave over one spoonful. He said to me, it was easier to fast a whole day and eat nothing than to leave over one spoonful in the middle of a meal. Okay, a tzaddik doesn't have that problem. It's quoted in the Tanya that they used to have to come to Hillel and remind him that he should eat. Rebbe, you didn't eat anything today. So, but eating for him was like a task. He had to take it upon himself. Okay, he said, I guess we have to have Rahmanus, we have to have mercy on the animal. Meaning his physical self. It says about Rabbi Yehuda, the one who wrote the Prince, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, who wrote the Mishnah. It says he didn't take any pleasure out of the delights of this physical world, even a little fingers, even like dipping a little finger in cold water. I was fabulously wealthy. All his money went to helping others. So for the tzaddik, he is in control. He has no desire for these things. The Beinoni has a lot of desire for these things, and he struggles with it. And here comes the crux. In the middle of page 210, second set of lines, every person has free will, free choice. And nobody can say, I didn't have choice. I couldn't control myself. It's not true. Even a person, if he can't control himself, he's mentally ill. Some people go around lighting fires. They love to light fires. They burn down buildings. They catch them, they take them to court, they say to the judge, I couldn't help myself. And there are many examples of this, of people who have a certain lust and a certain desire, and they can't control themselves. It's not true. Sexual aberrance. There's people who are immoral in their sexual behavior. They say, this is what I want, and it must be okay because Hashem gave me this desire. If Hashem didn't make me this way, there must be something good in it. Hashem made me to be this way. No, it's not true. Hashem gave you a challenge. Some people have a challenge, they like to steal things. They go into a store, they become very good at it. I had a friend, we used to stand side by side in the matzah bakery, checking the sticks. He was a brilliant scholar, very learned. He was a great mathematician. He used to stand there, he had earplugs the whole time. He was learning Gemara the whole time that we were working in the matzah bakery. And a member of his family was a kleptomaniac, that is to say, they steal. How do you say in Spanish? Klepto? Kleptomaniac. I guess that's where we got the word from the Spanish. And he would go around quietly paying for the things that this member of his family would steal. And the person would say, I can't help it. But it's not true. We're always in control of our life. And we have the Alter Rebbe says here, clear, there's a psak din, that every person is given the ability and the freedom to choose between right and wrong. Nobody is enslaved. You only enslave yourself by doing it over and over and over again until it could be the free choice is taken away. And then you can't control yourself. But even then, you can still control yourself. The famous story of a person whose name is mentioned in the Gemara, so he had to be a very holy person. And he did every sin under the book, everything. There's nothing new. You know, modern people, they like to say that my sin isn't a sin because it's modern. It's not modern. It's as old as the hills. There's nothing new. There's no new sins that people can do, no matter how wild they want to be. You read about in the Talmud, about the sins that people commit, it would make your hair stand on end. There was one time the Mittler Rebbe was giving Yechidus, he stopped in the middle. And nobody knew why he stopped giving Yechidus. And several days went by. And the Mittler Rebbe was doing deep tshuva. And nobody knew why. What did he do? And finally he revealed the reason that he stopped giving people Yechidus was because when a person would come to Yechidus and he would say to the Rebbe, I have a problem, I have a terrible problem. I steal, or I light fires, or I look at things I'm not supposed to, or I say Lashon Hara, or whatever it may be. So the Rebbe doesn't do any of those things. What's he going to say? How can he help this person? He's not on the same level. So the Rebbe has to find something in his character that is on his level the equivalent. Like instead of stealing things from the store, it could be that he has a shir with, this is something that happened, the Alter Rebbe, we used to learn with the son of his Rebbe, the Maggid, the son of the Maggid. He was called Avram the Angel. And he would teach the Alter Rebbe Hasidus, and the Alter Rebbe would teach him Talmud. Because the Alter Rebbe was great in Talmud and Halacha. And the Alter Rebbe, when Rebbe Avram would stop to think about something, the Alter Rebbe would quickly, when they were learning Talmud, and the son of the Maggid would think about something, the Alter Rebbe would quickly slip out the text that they were studying of Hasidus, and he would learn Hasidus. And he would steal time for Hasidus. Okay. This was a time designated for Talmud, and he was using it for Hasidus. So that's on his level, that's like stealing. So what is he supposed to do about it? So he would think to himself, what could he do about it? How could he fix, this isn't a good quality. There's this element of deceptiveness, deceiving your fellow. So that's not good. How am I going to fix it? And once he thought of how he would fix it, he could tell the person the same something on his level that would be like the same thing. And if he would do it, then he and the Alter Rebbe would be doing the same kind of tshuva together, and the Alter Rebbe's tshuva would help this person. You follow me?
Yeah.
So what happened? Somebody came in. So the Alter Rebbe, so the Rebbe, hearing about the problem that a person has, he has to find it within himself and then figure out what he's going to do about it. Because if it wasn't his problem, Hashem wouldn't send him the person to tell him about it. The fact that a person is coming and telling you about their problem means you have that problem. Hashem wants to know, what are you going to do about it? You're going to try and help your friend, but you can't help your friend if you don't have compassion, if you don't identify with them. So Hashem is telling the Rebbe, you know what? As righteous as you are, there's this certain area in your soul that hasn't been fixed up yet. You have to fix it up. So this person came to me and told me his problem. And it was so shocking. It was so shocking, I couldn't identify with it. I couldn't find anything in my whole character that would correspond to what this person had done. And it was a terrible thing that he had done. Terrible, terrible thing. And he knew it was terrible, and he didn't know what to do about it. And so he came to the Rebbe. What was the Rebbe supposed to do about it? He didn't know what to answer. So he had to stop giving yichidus. And this went for several days. And he was searching and searching. He was praying and saying Tilim. Finally started to say to give yichidus again. They said, well, how did you do? What did you do? He said, I couldn't find any way to connect with what this person told me. So I realized there must be some level of my soul where the Yetzer Hara is hidden. He's out of commission, but he's hidden there somewhere. And since he's so deeply hidden, I can't confront it, so I can't fix it. So I prayed to Hashem to heal me of the hidden evil that's in my heart. So this is what it means, that a tzaddik has no desire for evil. The Beinoni desires it, but struggles not to have it. Continuing now on page 210. Kigam b'shah shalev choymei, the person always has free choice. You see? What the Rebbe has to do, he has to help us to give us the strength to exercise free choice, to exercise our choice. And he does this by encouraging us and telling us about the greatness of our soul. You know, for instance, I'll give you an example. People who learn Musar is ethics. They learn about bad things that people are tempted to do. And by learning about them, they recognize the temptation that comes along and they push it away. I don't want any part of this. This is evil. I'm not going to do any evil. That's not the Rebbe's approach. That's not the Rebbe's approach. The approach of the Rebbe is, he tells a person, you should have to know, you are a boy or a girl in Tzivos Hashem, you're in Hashem's army. You're in the front lines of the war, and you're not alone. You're never alone. Hashem is the commander-in-chief, and he's there with you, not like other kings who send their soldiers out to war and they stay at home in the palace. Hashem is there with you all the time. And you're precious in the eyes of Hashem. He depends on you, and he counts on you, and he builds the child up. He builds a person up to know how great he can be. And this is a great talent of our Rebbe, that he would look at a person and tell them, he would identify the great things that they can accomplish. And even you could say now, but I can't speak to the Rebbe now. What am I going to do? So the answer is, there's such a thing called divine providence, hashgacha pratis. We have letters from the Rebbe. We have sichos from the Rebbe. We have maimorim from the Rebbe. We have videos of the Rebbe. If you read something or you hear something, Hashem wanted you to hear it, see it, hear about it. Just like the Rebbe learned about himself through what people would tell him when they came to Yechidus. The Rebbe would say, oh, I didn't think I had this problem. Now I see I do. Another story. I told you this story one time. I'm not going to tell you the whole story now, just the head of the chapters. There was a person from Eretz Yisrael who went to Brazil, where the nuts come from. He went to Brazil, and he worked there as a teacher for a few years, and earned money to be able to take back to his family in Israel. Those were the days when people in Israel were poor. Now you have billionaires in Israel. They appeal for funds. And he came to New York to visit his grandma, who lived on Eastern Parkway. And since he was here, he used to go to 770. And one time he was sitting near the Rebbe, and somebody came over to the Rebbe in the middle of a Farbrengen to say L'chaim and asked a bracha for a certain friend of his. And the Rebbe said, why does he need a bracha? And he said, because he has a lot of debts that he needs to pay back. Now, it could be that he was really asking about himself, but he said he was ashamed, so he said his friend. So the Rebbe said to him, if he would stop taking loans and not paying back, he wouldn't have debts. His problem is he takes loans and he doesn't repay his loans. So he gets deeper and deeper into debt. This person from Eretz Yisrael, who was from Brazil and I was in New York, heard this. He said, if I heard this, that means I have to take it to my heart. And he made a resolution from now on, he's not going to take any loans for the rest of his life. And came the big test, he had to marry off one of his children, and the last of his children, and he had no money. He had hired a hall, a band, a caterer, tailors, gifts for the kala, furniture for the apartment, and so on. And he had no money, and he was going to lose. He was terrified on the wedding day. It should be the happiest day of his life, marrying off his youngest child. And he was miserable because he knew the only thing that waited for him was fights and embarrassment. People who wanted to be paid. And he's in shul in the morning and he's wearing his wedding clothes with a fur hat. That's the custom in Ger. It's a different Hasidic group. And in walks a shliach of the Rebbe, a person who was here during Tishrei, who served people food the whole time. And he said, I see that looks like you're making a wedding today. Is that correct? He said, yes. He said, I have money for you from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He said, what? He says, the Rebbe told me, he gave me this money before I left last night. I flew from New York, 1 o'clock in the morning. And the Rebbe told me before I fly, I should take this money and give it to a chassan. You are the first chassan I met since I got off the plane. It must be for you. Wow. But you see, that's what it means. That it's a long story. I just made it very short. How did the Rebbe know? He never told the Rebbe that he took this upon himself. His friends were urging him to take loans. He wouldn't take a loan for anything. The Rebbe knew and the Rebbe helped. So in the same way, the Rebbe communicates with us in so many different ways. So if you read about something, you hear about something, you should know that that's the way, that's how the Rebbe is communicating with you. Have a great Shabbos. Bench in this Shabbos of Orchim, we say a blessing for the whole of the days of the month ahead, which includes Shavuos. What? Remember, remind your whoever you're staying with or eating with to make an Erev Tavshilin on Thursday before Yom Tov begins, and to do everything you can to say Tehillim and learn in any language you're capable of, Hebrew or English or Spanish or Russian, Danish, to prepare for the great holy day. We're standing now. We enter on Sunday before the mountain.
Yeah.
There it is. And we're full of anticipation of this great moment that Hashem is going to give us, the most precious gift ever given to mankind. Shavuos, and we're prepared. We're going to say, Nasa, we're going to do it. V'nishma, and we're going to learn it. Have a good Shavuos.